And we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our last stream. If you haven't already, after today's show, check it out. We had Hans in this, Hans with us. I think it was last Wednesday. Last Wednesday. Really enjoyed that conversation. It was really neat to see who I consider the GOAT of kayak, design, come in and just kind of go through the ins and outs of the process of designing the perfect kayak. So, but today I'm really excited. Today we've got Tyler. Tyler runs, mainly just, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I've followed him on Instagram for a while now, and vice versa. He's Southern Flow, so he does things that are near and dear to my heart, and that is river and creek fishing. So, going to bring on Tyler here, and without further ado, man, welcome.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me.
I appreciate you showing up, man. Appreciate it.
I feel honored that you have the guy who designed the kayak that I fish out of, and then the next week you have me. So
heck yeah,
you pad my ego a little bit.
Yeah, you got to follow that. So yeah, bring it hard, bring it heavy. And same thing with us. I've got a PWR in the garage. She's got the RVR. We're kind of big fans of his work too. But it was definitely kind of neat to see his point of view and kind of learn a little bit more about him there. But man, Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Well, I'm born and raised in Middle Tennessee. Most of the stuff I fish is Middle Tennessee. My logo I've made here is all the rivers of Tennessee because that's what I like to fish, creeks and rivers. Nice. And we fish lakes a little bit too, but really my bread and butter, what I really enjoy doing is getting on some skinny water, floating 8-10 miles down a creek and catching smallmouth. I like catching spotted and largemouth too, but there's a special place in my heart for smallmouth bass. So that's what I like to do. I work for Frito-Lay. As a facility manager. I have a mechanical engineering background, but 3 kids. But my true hobby is fishing. So, that's pretty much it. I've been doing, you text me earlier like how long you've been doing YouTube, and it's like I look back and it was 14 or 15 years, and I'm like, so I've got like 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. I've been doing it for 15 years, but really when I was in high school, I was fishing a pond and I got a GoPro and it was just playing around with it. Did some like nighttime time lapses with it. So I've always kind of had a passion a little bit for videography, photography a little bit. Nice. Never gotten super into it, but just, posted some videos, I got underwater fish releases from 12, 15 years ago, and still doing the same thing today, just on a little bit, I say a little bit bigger scale. So, and then about 3 years ago, I started filming like full length videos of trips and floating and camping and fishing and trying to put those together. But it was really just putting those videos out there and putting some music to it just to send to my friends to have fun. And then, I don't know, about a year ago, started doing TikToks and Instagram and YouTube shorts. And then just trying to do those pretty consistently, just more so as a hobby than anything. I have, I won't say little desire. I would love to fish for a living. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like I'm dying to go big time on mainstream YouTube. I've got a good career, got a good job, and my kids keep me pretty busy too. So when I can get out and fish and make a video of it, it's a good hobby for now. And they always say too, you do something that you love till it's your job, and then you don't love it as much. So I don't know if that would be the case or not, but we'll see.
It can get there, and it hasn't got there for me by any means. But and I'm not one of those guys. I don't do 2 or 3 videos a week or anything. But me, I never wanted to get to a point where I was just putting content out there just to put content, or getting to a point where it's so many days gone by and I'm like, holy crap, I've got to get something out there and rush around and try to, and don't get me wrong, I want to be consistent somewhat, but I don't really follow the rules, so to speak, of YouTube, doing things the same time and same day and schedule it. But and we all do it different. And, but I've enjoyed your content for a while. I've been watching John with Creek Fishing Adventures for a long time. So it's kind of along the same lines of things that interest me. And I'm talking about me as just a consumer of YouTube versus what I do. So I'm hugely passionate on fishing rivers and creeks. That's what I grew up doing. I grew up on the Buffalo National River here, and that's what I grew up doing. I grew up catfishing with chicken livers and treble hooks and doing it out of a little aluminum flat bottom boat. What got you started in kayak fishing or just fishing in general?
Well, I'll say, I grew up on the water. Really, we used to camp out almost every weekend on Wheeler Lake down in North Alabama. My dad was big into fishing. We'd go down there and camp out almost every weekend. It seems like, and then I fished when I was younger, but a lot of times I would just play with toys underneath the steering wheel console. I'd get out in the shade and I'd have my toys and I'd play. And my dad would catch fish and I'd go up there and I'd reel it in. Then I'd jump back under and start playing with my toy cars.
Nice.
Loved swimming, always was in the water and stuff like that. And then I think I got away from it a little bit as I was like, growing up until like through middle school. I was busy with sports and stuff like that. And then probably towards later on in high school, I really got into fishing a creek down the road from here. And I'd go out there and there was a lady that I taught swim lessons for, and she had kayaks and she let me borrow her kayaks. So me and a couple buddies would load up and float 4 miles down this creek. And once we got to start to drive and stuff, and then I was in college. Me and my roommate got a couple cheap kayaks, and we would go every weekend up in Cookeville, Tennessee, just somewhere and paddle around and do that stuff. It was fun. Then I don't know, it was probably trying to think, my son was 2017, 2018. I got a Wilderness Systems Ride 115, and I thought that thing was the coolest kayak because I've been in all these sit-ins, Vapor 10s, and I got that Ride 115, and man, I was just like accessorized. I got a super good deal on it, and then from there, I've just been flipping kayaks and upgrading and buying them just to sell them and stuff like that. So, and I've got a whole spreadsheet of like the 40 kayaks I've had since I was in college, and what I bought them for, what I sold them for, all the accessories that came with it, just kind of like mapped it all out. So it's just kind of been a passion that's really taken over, 2017, 2018, all the way to now.
Yeah. Well, so you talked about the Ride 150. What was your first kayak? Was that your first kayak, or did you talked about some other kayaks that you'd been in before there?
The first kayak I had was like a 10-foot Pelican. I don't even know what it was. Just there's a guy up in Cookeville had 2 of them. Me and my roommate went and bought them. But my first like serious fishing kayak was that I was in a Vapor 10, Old Town Vapor 10. And everybody that asks, like, what should I get up to start with? That's what I always recommend because it's a great sit-in kayak. It's super stable. But then once I got into the Ride 115, it just kind of set me off to, almost like trying to try them all between, Bonafides, Jacksons, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I've been in paddlecraft before, but my first like legit kayak was the Wilderness Ride 115, and we bought them because we're just like anybody else. We go to the grocery store and you've got kayaks just stood up everywhere, and we had a little bit more free time at that. This is right around when COVID started. I grew up fishing kind of like you as a kid, and just anything I can get out on the water or on the bank. I started out just being a bank beater. And we were driving around, and I was like, that looks like that'd be fun. Why don't we look at that? And I'm a bigger guy, so I think me being of the heavier persuasion kept me out of some of the cheaper kayaks out there that I talk about. But because I touched one of them, I'm like, the whole thing's just folding me, poking it like a belly. I'm like, I don't think I want to put myself in that. And I was looking for something with a really good weight capacity because I was looking at. I'm thinking of everything that we could possibly do, like overnights, fishing, just paddling around, and found this kayak. I got mine on closeout, so it was new, and it's a paddle shop that I manage right now. It's before I worked there, but Ride 115, I got it for like $6.99 on closeout, and I'm like, they were telling me about this one, and it's got a 500-pound capacity. And I always tell people, it's like, if you can find one of those used, and you can still kind of find them around there every now and then, it's the one kayak that I wish I never would have got rid of. And to me, the best way to describe it, it's like the Wilderness Tarpon, but the heavy duty Tarpon. It's a bit of heavier kayak. It's got a similar seat to it, and just good lake river, creek, good all around kayak. And those are my favorite starting kayaks. Is kayaks that you can kind of do both. And I knew recently you were in the RS 117 from Bonafide. I think that's a really good multi-use kayak because that's something you can take on the lake, take on the river. It may not do anything just amazing, but it does both really well.
So you said the Ride 115 you wish you never gotten rid of. Well, I got mine for $700 with it had an adjustable carbon paddle for $700 from a guy who was about to have a back surgery. He's like, I'm not gonna be able to use it for a while, so
Yeah.
So I drove all the way up to Nashville, which is about an hour from me, and picked it up. And I sold it, and I've regretted it ever since. So I bought 3 more since then, and I've got one now. My buddy just bought a house, so I finally took it over to his house because I've got tired of storing it because he's the only one that ever uses it. And then that RS 117, when I went to buy that, I thought I was going to buy SS 127.
Okay.
I drove all the way to, I think it was down in Huntsville, which was about an hour and a half from me. And I got there and I was like, oh, this isn't really what I thought. It doesn't have that nice seat that the SS 127 has. Like, I thought that's what I was buying, but I didn't want to admit that and feel stupid. So I bought it anyway. And I've had a SS 127 since then and a 107. And that 117 is like perfect for what I do because the 107 was too small. The 127 was too big. That 117 is like Goldilocks. Is what I tell everybody. It's just right for the creeks and the small rivers.
So I'm going to ask this question because I know the answer, and I'm going to fan on this kayak for a little bit. What's your current kayak, and what made you choose it?
I've been fishing out of the RVR 117 or the 119. I'm sorry. I drove all the way almost like to Atlanta to get it. It was like 2.5 hours to get it, but it was $1,200.
Wrong with Otter, Arkansas.
I could have probably got there before then, but I bought that from a guy down there, and I really like it just from the open platform. So I have that RS 117, and it was, it's great. It's got the center console. It's got the little flap you can put everything under. But that open deck, it kind of reminded me. I've had a New Canoe Frontier 12, and the open deck concept on those, I really like that. But it's a heavy boat, and this kind of combined a little bit of both. Like, I still got my Frontier 12, and I can take both my boys who are 7 and 5 out there with me. So that's like my dad and son boat, and then I've got my overnight boat, and then I've got what's the Jackson Kilroy? That's for my, like, if I want to take a 3-day trip, I can load that thing down and it packs super well. But for my like regular overnight trips, that RVR has been awesome. I've only really had like 3 good trips out of it. So, and I haven't done an overnight with it yet because I did an overnight with John with Creek Fishing Adventures, and I still had the RVR. Excuse me, I'm getting all mixed up on these numbers. I had the RVR, but I hadn't set my cameras up on it yet. I hadn't packed my backpack on it yet, and I didn't want to take a chance going with this famous YouTube fisherman and not having my stuff work out. So, so I still need to do it overnight in that, but I think it's going to be great.
You hit on just about every kayak or a very similar version of what is in our garage currently.
You got good taste. I'll give you that. On your Frontier with your kids, do you run the flat on it? Like the flat seats, what we call it?
Bench seat.
Oh yeah. No, I don't. They just sit in the floorboard.
Nice.
Yeah. They were, especially the last 2 or 3 years, they're a little bit smaller. Now my 7-year-old, he probably needs a seat, and I have a full size seat I could put on the front of it. But with both of them, and it spins, and they just like to play in the water and like hang on a rope and float behind me. So I just or one will sit on the cooler. So the buddy seat's what it's called. And I had looked for one of those. I never found one, and I'd got a stadium chair. I got 2 stadium chairs I picked up on Marketplace, and I was going to put them on a board or something and mount them, but I never did because I never really needed to.
Nice. Yeah, I was in. I got rid of our first 2 kayaks that we bought together. I had the Ride 115. She had the Perception Pescador 10, good basic starter kayak. We paddled around a bit. Of course, I took took a rod with me and then started fishing. I'm like, hey, this is really nice. And yeah, as soon as it was when I graduated college, I started looking around, and the manager position opened up for Ozark Mountain Trading Company here. So I was like, well, I'll just interview down there, talk to Jason, and talk to Larry, the owner, and then they hired me. And man, I went in there, and like when we bought, it was during COVID, so there wasn't anything to look at. Everything was kind of picked through. They were running out of stuff. They couldn't get stuff, and
they're running out of plastic to make new ones.
Yes, yeah, and so I started there in February of 21, and I remember the first new canoe shipment we got. It was a Frontier 12. And it was red and black, because I'm kind of a red and black guy. I dig it. And I told her, I was like, this thing is beautiful. It's got a swivel seat. It's open deck space.
I think it's called Bulldog, right?
Yes. Yep. And I told her, I was like, I think I'm going to buy this thing. And
I had one too.
Literally
Bulldog.
Nice.
Of course.
One of the first new canoe Frontier 12s I bought was a Bulldog, and I think I've had a camo one, and right now I got a blue one.
That blue is sharp.
Yeah.
That blue is so sharp.
I've been through a lot of kayaks in the last 5 or 6 years. Like I'd see a good deal and flip it and use it for a little bit, flip it, sell it to a buddy, all kinds of stuff. It's been fun. Man,
I'll say this. One thing about red is people either love it or they hate it. It's one of the more divisive colors, just what I call standard colors. Obviously, it's not pink or anything, but red, like, I've heard people, we talk to people on the phone a lot. Someone say, hey, do you got any of those Frontiers or the new Unlimiteds? I'm like, yeah. I was like, what color are you looking for? He goes, well, I don't, I'm not really picky on color. I'll take anything. Well, as long as it's not red. And I found that out really quick when I was trying to get rid of the Frontier 12. I was like, man, people just didn't really respond to red. Now, if it was camo or tundra or anything like that, or patrol blue even.
That tundras are sharp.
That was my Unlimited. My Unlimited was the tundra color, and I dig it. But yeah, it was a little harder to get rid of the Bulldog, so that kind of affected my decision going with a kayak. I'm like, okay, if I ever need to get rid of this thing, and I never plan on getting rid of them. I'm one of the ones where I think I'm just going to keep it for a long time, and then like the following year, this new great thing comes out. I'm like, man, that would be nice. That would solve this problem. There's always a problem solved with a new kayak coming out, and
but he's better about getting rid of them than I am. I just hoard them for like years.
Yeah, she has more paddle craft in the garage than I do. So
that's funny.
So
my wife.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say my wife would always give me a hard time about, hey, I'm about to drive to Atlanta and get a kayak and spend about $1,500. Are you okay with that? And she was like, no. And I was like, it's well. In next month, I'll get back. I'll sell it for $1,700, and I'll just do it again. Like I've got this little kayak stash away for a little bit, but now she just kind of knows, like, if I'm going to get it, there's a reason, and she's just like, I roll and let me go. So
I don't get that with her, and that can be a pro and a con. The pro is I don't, it's never a big deal to get something. The con is usually.
You got to get her something too.
Well, but sometimes I'm looking for that feedback. Like, do we really need another kayak? She goes, yeah, just get it. Okay.
The biggest drawback for us is we're just like, none of our vehicles are in our garage anymore.
Same.
We don't. I've got my little homemade rolling cart in there when I had a Pro Angler, and then I've got her RVR on there. She's got a Hobie Lynx that she uses for lake, and then I've got the PWR on the floor, and then so on the creeks. You were talking about the Kilroy. My favorite river and creek kayak that I've used is the Tripper 12, which is the same hull as the OG Kilroy, but just doesn't have like the console or the gear track, which you can add that, of course, but. Man, I took that thing out and I just loved it. I like a bit of a hybrid kayak on rivers and creeks because, sit on tops are great, but I kind of like to have something that's still stable, but I can have a little bit more control over. And, we go through some, I wouldn't say crazy stuff, but, Buffalo's got some, when at a decent water level, it's got some stuff that I like to have a little bit more control over.
And him and the Tripper is a much better fit than him in an RVR. Because when the last Buffalo River trip we took, we both dumped. Like I hit a tree. It was great. But
it happens.
He how many times? Like twice.
One time was stupidity. It was just sheer like doing something that I just knew better. The second time I just, mistakes were made and I went in. But the first time I hit a tree root. So it was a tree overturned and just saw the root ball and I could see it forever. And they had pulled over because they had kind of gotten ahead of me a little bit. I'm fishing a little bit more. And so I was catching up to them, and where the root ball is, there's a path here and a path here. So it's right in the middle. Well, I took the wrong turn basically. And I knew there wasn't a whole lot of water on that side, but I was like, okay, I'll just beach up there with them and I'll drag my kayak and we'll go. Well, and I even saw the current. The current was going right in front of the root ball. What I did was I tried to go this way and that current steered the front end of it. And I just hit it head on and it flipped the back end of it around. And then I'm just, this was what? March. So it was pretty silly.
It was 50 in the 50s. Water was in the 50s.
It was cold. And but I had an anchor. I had a claw anchor, which I know better than to do anyway. The claw anchor had gotten hooked onto that root ball.
Oh, no.
I had to and I'm in waist deep water, so it's nothing crazy. But so I had to go to the front of the boat. I'm having to unhook the anchor. Well, I had one of those little Rebel craws and two rods. So I had two treble hook lures on the end of the nose, and both of those had got caught in the rope for the anchor. So when I
treble hooks and the ropes don't mix.
I grabbed them and I got it in my finger, and I'm like, man, this was early in it too. I want to say this is like the second shoal, the entire float. I'm like, this is hour one of like a 7 or 8 hour float.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and then the second time I was just done. I was just so aggravated at myself for making so Uncle David Outdoors is on here. He's owned an RVR since pretty much day one. And he does overnight float trips. Any of y'all, if you haven't already, check out his channel, but he works with me at the shop. But he jokes to me a lot where he says, yeah, you really made a good kayak look bad that day. I resemble that remark for sure.
Go ahead.
I might have you beat. I was floating with a buddy of mine, and there was about 6 or 7 people that we kind of come up on, and they're like, "Hey, what kind of kayak is that?" And I said, "Oh, this is the Bonafide, or not? Sorry, this is the Wilderness Ride 115. Is it stable?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it's super stable." And then I dumped it over as I was telling them how stable it was in about 2 foot of water. So that was pretty funny because I just kind of leaned over a little bit too far, kind of flipping it back and forth, and they were like, "Who's this idiot?"
Yeah, it's always doing something that I shouldn't have done, or go like you see, the owner that I work for, he was telling us like, yeah, sometimes being a good paddler, just knowing when to drag around or go around a shoal. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, something. I just like sending it. I just like going through it, and what happens. Like I've got all my safety stuff on. I ain't worried about it. But I mean, yeah, it's like I get in there, and then the one thing about the Bonafides and really anything with a good secondary stability, you got those little edges on the sides. If you get turned a little bit, that current will catch that secondary stability and almost initiate that roll. And I definitely, and of course, I'm a tall guy and heavier. So, I'm rivers and creeks in general, I like being sitting down as low as I can because of that.
Yeah.
The RVR, that's one thing I wish the RVR did have is a little bit, I wish the seat position that was in was the high position, and I wish it had a low seat position. Just, for people who, enjoy going through a few shoals that maybe go class 2, may even rival, getting close into that class 3, because most of the rivers and creeks are going to be long pools of water connected pretty much by those shoals. And that's kind of the way our waters are here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think one of the coolest things about the trip that we've been talking about is all 3 of us were in RVR in different colors. So it was interesting.
Tell them about your tree though.
Oh, my
that
tree.
Was hilarious. It doesn't sound as bad as it isn't as bad as it sounds. But
so they like to put me in the middle just because if something happens, they can get to me. So David went, and there's a tree, banks here, trees going this way, and I see David. I'm like, okay, he barely made it, and I'm like, we're going to see how this goes. I stopped paddling like an idiot and saw this thing coming like it was like straight here. And I put my hand up trying to push it. Yeah. I did not know. I thought I fell right. He's like, no, you fell left. I'm like, yeah. Well, here we go. And we had half a mile left. I think that's what bothered me the most, where I'm like, seriously, like right at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always the easy stuff that gets you, that just aggravates the crap out of me. But when she was getting close to it, and instead of paddling away from it, she reached out and tried to push away. Well, when she pushed away, the boat went out the other way from her and she fell toward the tree. And I'm just like, oh gosh. But part of me felt kind of cool, because like I dumped twice, and then seeing you dump once, I'm like, you know what? We're okay now. Because, David's going through it, he's going through shoals backwards, and I'm already aggravated because I'm wet and I'm cold, and I lost my favorite spinning rod on the trip. And I was just like, man, it's like this.
Oh, you were in a bad mood then.
Yeah, I was. And that's what put me in it. I lost my external battery for my GoPro.
Your catch board.
I lost my catch board. I lost a GoPro battery, which bothers me because that's not something I'm a big believer in keeping our rivers clean. And I'm dirtying up my favorite waterway just by my own idiot.
The good news was, because I was the last one to dump, that lovely strap in the RVR, if you have not experienced it yet, that actually did save my rod, because my boat was completely upside down and I didn't lose it. So
somebody wasn't using the nice features that the kayak has. So I just had them just laying up, and that last one, though, it was a little bit more of a substantial rapid there, and I'm like, oh crap, because I had it upside down, and I got my feet underneath me, and I'm turning it upside down. I was like, oh my God. And I'm looking at my GoPro, and the lens on the GoPro is kind of cockeyed because it had taken a pretty good hit. I had it on the boomstick behind me, and it was funny watching the video, which I've got. I'm still cutting it up there, but when it was upside down, it was rolling. So you could just see the camera just bumping up against the rocks, and then you could see my battery, and you could see like different stuff going. And it reminded me, if you watch John's videos, he dumped one time, and he had the GoPro on, and you could see like his tackle boxes going and all his gear.
That's funny. I'll say the first time I took my wife, we were still dating at the time, and she had never been on the water. And I was like, hey, let's go kayaking. And I took her out in the kayak, and we literally got started half mile in. There's a sharp bend to the right, and there's a tree in the water. And I kind of get on the inside of her and say, okay, well, the current's going to try to take you into that tree. You just got to stay on the inside of it. And I kind of stayed on that side of her so I could kind of push her out of it. But when I pushed her out of it, it pushed me right into it, and flipped me over up under the tree. I come out, my kayak's like wedged in the tree, and she's freaking out. She had never done anything like this before. So I get out, run up the bank, and then I jump back in, float down to it. And it took me probably 5 or 10 minutes because it filled up with water trying to get it out. And I finally get it out, and I'm going to swim it. I'm like, I'll swim it over the side, dump it out, and we'll continue on. Well, it was so full of water, I was trying to swim it. It was just pulling me with it. And so I just had to let it go. And then jumped on the back of the kayak with her. We paddled downstream probably a mile, caught up to it, finally got it dumped out with water, but I'd lost my paddle. So then we had to drag up the bank. We dragged through a farmer's field back to the road. I walked back to the truck, and I didn't think she was ever going to go kayaking with me again, but she really does enjoy it now. So that was her first experience with Southern Flow.
So when we met, and I didn't know this when we met, but she was a big paddleboarder, and so she was used to being out on the water, and that's kind of how I got her. Because I'll get people ask me, I was like, how do you get your wife to go fishing with you? I just can't get my wife.
There's one other piece to that.
Well, I mean, she was watching me, and if you're going on a trip with someone who likes to fish a lot, be prepared to be bored to death. And I think that's what was happening to her. Was I was fishing a lot, and she's just kind of floating around, and so she just like, we bought her. We went to Walmart, bought you a little combo, and the first time we went out, we kind of separated a little bit, and I can just hear her yelling, and of course my phone's ringing, and I could just hear her like, help. I was like, she caught her first largemouth, and it was a decent sized fish, and I'm over there, I'm helping her get it off, and showing it to her and all that, and then now of course she's tying her own knots and picking out her own lures, and like she's definitely taken to it. But she, that's how I did it. But she enjoys the science of it and the animal aspect of it, obviously, and then introducing her to the smallmouth. That's kind of my thing. I love largemouth, but man, smallmouth, being on a river and creek, catching like 5 different species of fish, and said they're mean, they're aggressive, they're catching an 18-inch fish or larger in less than a foot of water. I mean, it just you just never know what you're going to get.
They have zero quit. That's what I like about it. Is they never stop digging until you can. If you can get your hand on their belly, sometimes that'll tame them out. But even then, sometimes they'll throw a hook in your hand too.
That's actually going to bring us to our next question. If you were limited to only 2 fish species for the rest of your life, what 2 fish species would you want to catch?
Smallmouth bass and flathead catfish.
Oh, really? Nice.
And I say that because I've caught very few flatheads, but I watch these guys that catch big flatheads in skinny creeks, like River Certified, and there's a couple other people. But I don't have enough experience to act like I know what I'm talking about, but it just looks fun.
Yeah.
I've caught a few flathead like below Wilson and Wheeler Dam or on the Duck River here, but they've all been, a couple pounds to maybe 4 or 5 pounds. But I would love to catch like a 30 or 40 pound flathead from a kayak.
Oh yeah.
Man.
My thing's catching a striper. Catching a striper from a kayak, I think would be amazing. And they're actually kind of running right now here locally, but.
So there's a guy local here in Tennessee Moving Waters, and he does guided trips, and he has a wade trip where you wade at night for a striper. And I've done everything but book it. So I need to book that trip with him because it looks like a ton of fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just could imagine hooking into something big like that and just letting it drag me around a little bit. Like that would be a rush. And that's, I grew up catching, that was my thing. I grew up catfishing, I'd use, frozen chicken livers and all that, and understanding the frustration that comes with bluegill just turning my chicken liver to snot and then coming off. But catching those big catfish, that was I used to have those old Polaroids of me just holding up these big old catfish. And and it's funny because I haven't caught it. I mean, I've caught catfish just accidentally here the last couple of years, but nothing crazy. I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. But one of the guys that works at the shop with me, we went on a float here on a local creek, and we're catching fish, and he got into a pretty good sized catfish, and he posted a picture of it today, ironically. And I love it because he owns a Jackson Bite, but he owns a Jackson Bite. It's the color scheme that I designed last year. Jackson will do like custom color schemes each year for some of their top retailers, and they let me design the last 2 years of those, and it's one of my favorite ones. It was kind of a blue, yellow, and a black. But I don't know what it was. They only did a limited run, so we got a couple of Jackson Rivieras, which is kind of the outfitter, the rental boat. But they only sent us one bite in that color, and it was the one. We sent them a design. They sent us a picture after they molded it, and that was the one they did. So I told them, it's like, man, if you're looking for a bite and you like that color, get it, because that's literally the only one that's ever been made. Like, nobody's ever going to have one that looks like that. It's like that. So he still has that. I always tell him, I was like, man, if you ever sell that thing, I want to be the first call you make, because I will buy that in a heartbeat. So I got kind of an off the wall question for you here, and I thought it was kind of an interesting topic too. So just, we were talking about Hans earlier and designing kayaks. So say Hans has got like this, he's got writer's block. Either he ain't feeling it, and they go, Bonafide Kayak or whoever comes to Tyler and they say, man, we need you to design a kayak. You're designing the perfect kayak for yourself. What would the first feature that you focus on be?
The thing that I wish I had in more of the kayaks is internal storage. So you have a little bit of storage, like the Ride 115 has that front hatch, but then you go to the RS 117, there's no internal storage. You go to the RVR, there's no internal storage. Because I like to pack dry bags with I like to do overnight stuff, right? So, and then I take my fishing gear, my camera gear, and my camping gear, and I'm getting pretty top heavy. So if I had a way on like the RVR one night to open a hatch and stuff some dry bags down in there to save some deck space, I think that would be pretty awesome.
Solid.
What about you?
That's interesting. I'm big on performance, so I like stability, but having a river and creek kayak that performs really well while still getting, that's why I like that's why I like the RVR so much. For me personally, rigging. So I like built-in horizontal rod storage, and that would be the first thing. So if I'm designing, and again, I'm talking about something that I like, and if I'm doing a river kayak, I'm building in horizontal rod storage. So it doesn't necessarily have to be tip protectors, but I want something a little bit more than just, maybe little divots in the front of the boat where you stick your rod tips. I want something a little bit more substantial to that. I like the strap that Bonafide does on the RVR. That's definitely useful. For a guy like me, it's a little hard sometimes to climb up into the tip of the boat and, unstrap it and strap it. But just something to hold rods in horizontally built into the kayak, I think it'd be really nice. And I know there's accessories you can do with that, but built in, I kind of dig that.
How many rods are you taking on a river trip?
River trip, I'm a little different. I do 2 max. I'll do, and again, big shout out to John at Creek Fishing. I reached out to him and I'm like, dude, I want a premium combo setup for rivers and creeks. Like I've got some cheaper stuff that I've used, and I kind of, what's a really good one for casting light lures? And, he gave me some suggestions and I took that. I absolutely loved it. That's been a game changer for me, but I like having something that I can throw a little top water, like a little whopper plopper. And then I like another one where I can throw like a smaller, low profile, like a little craw or a Helgermite, or, even any Ned rig, bug style bait. But I like being able to switch back and forth. But in my kayak, that being able to store that stuff and carry it effectively while paddling and adjusting my boat, that's kind of the one thing that I like to see more of, is just that, that little bit more of a lock-in horizontal storage. So I don't have to worry about tree branches. I don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah, I usually carry 3. Sometimes I'll carry 4. And I usually lay them, underneath like the butt of the rod under my seat, and they're laying on their front deck. But then I also have it's the rope that comes with the power pole. I use that as my pull rope.
Okay.
And I'll reel my treble hook on my water plopper up, and I'll set it down, and I'll bump into something and it'll stick in that rope. And then I'm 20 minutes trying to get that out because I was too lazy to pull it back down. But like with you saying that, really reminding me of the that Jackson Kilroy, because it's got the tubes down the side where you can put the rods. It's not super easy to get them in and out, but if you want to put them there and have them with you and then kind of get them out as you need them, that would be great. If you could do something, incorporate something like that, there's a little bit easier access in a sit on top kayak. I think I agree with you there.
And even if it's just for 2 rods, even if I wanted to take more than 2 rods, just like say the Coosa X from Jackson, they've got they kind of got away from the external rod tip protectors and they're more kind of in the deck. I like that setup. It reminds me a little bit of the Pro Angler, but in a river kayak. If you're wanting to have something lighter, which is, kind of what I would like, just having one on each side, one little through hole to stick the rods in, to carry 2 rods. Anything, if I wanted to carry more than 2, which is very likely, and I've definitely done that before, I can find a way to do that. But just having 2, primary, just protected, so that way, if I'm going through some rapids, I'm not having to hurry up and store stuff or tie stuff down or get it secured. Just having it in there, that's a big deal to me. And I would like to see kayak manufacturers do a little bit more on river and creek. I feel like every manufacturer has got like 4 or 5 different big lake kayak setups, and whether you want to do motor or pedal drive or power it. But Bonafide doing the river and creek, I'm a huge fan of that. Native does it with the Falcon 11. Obviously, Jackson's got the Coosa X, Crescent's got the Sholey, and New Canoe's got the Flint. So I'd like to see a little bit more options. You don't have to go half and half on it, but I'm speaking from this area too, and I'm sure your area as well. We've got a lot of lake around here, but there's a lot of really rich rivers and creeks here too. So you touched a little bit on it. You're talking about like, your rods and your gear. What are some of your favorite creek and river fishing combos you got?
As far as rod and reels?
Yeah, your favorite.
So I've been fishing with and I go on the cheaper side because I am rough on stuff.
Yeah.
The Abu Garcia Pro Max with the Vengeance 7-foot rod, medium heavy. It's kind of the best all around. I've got 2 or 3 of those. I had there's a guy here local that built me a custom rod. I picked out the color and the handles and all that stuff. And I have a couple videos where I've sent him that I hit something and it bends and then it comes down, and I 2 or 3 times I've almost broke it. And then last trip I went on, I broke it. I hadn't sent him that video yet. So, so I'm mostly throwing bait casters. I'd like spinning rods for certain things, but they don't sit in my kayak well. Like because your bait caster, we get them all jumbled together, it'll wrap around, because you got so much flex in it and the way the spin casts. And so I very rarely take a spin cast, and sometimes I wish I had it for like a little light Ned rig or something, but I can usually set those up on one of my bait casters. And I'm taking, if I got 3 rods, I've got my prime time is like May to October, and I've got a whopper plopper tied on, and I'm throwing that joker almost all day long. I've got a Zoom fluke tied on with a weighted swim bait hook, and I might have a Nico crawl or a small jig or something like tied on that third one. So, but I love the top water bite more than anything. I think it makes the best videos. It's the most exciting, and the smallmouth love those whopper ploppers. So,
what size whopper plopper do you use?
90.
Okay. Yeah. I like the 90. I've been running the 60s. And I use the black with the red eyes. That just seems to be a really good all around. I know the bone is really good, or the white, but that black one, I've run that so much. I think the gunk has gotten up in it so much that it doesn't spin right. And I've just gotten that's my favorite thing about the smallmouth is, as soon as that thing hits the water, boom. I mean, it's like like someone threw a firecracker in there and it hits immediately.
It's either that or they're chasing it all the way to the boat, and then they'll headbutt your kayak trying to get it.
The combo that John suggested, or one of them, and the one I went with, I got a Shimano. It's the Shimano Mirabelle, and that thing's just a game changer. And I told him, I was like, I've got a lot of stuff that, and I'm like you, on my spinning rods, I don't really go too hard on them. And the thing that I love about spinning rods is a quality spinning rod versus a quality bait caster rod combo. You're really not spinning as much. So I told him, like, I just want one really good one. I'm like you, I've been rough on them, but I don't want one that I can kind of baby, but I want something that's going to cast a long distance. And I throw that Hellgrammite a lot, and I'm kind of like you on the whopper plopper. I'll do a fishing trip, but I may only throw that one lure, and I use the Nico Hellgrammites, the one that are indestructible. So the only way I'm losing that thing is if I'm hanging it up on a rock or something and I'm in current. But
a lot.
I get so aggravated at myself, and I know that's part of river and creek fishing. Is you're fishing in current, you're going to get hung up, and it's always the stupidest thing. And again, self-aware here. I'm getting ready to go over a shoal. So I'm like, I know, action is coming. So what do? Do I put my rod and secure it in the kayak? No. One more.
You get 2 more casts out of it.
I see a little calm pocket there, like, ooh, and then you get that little senses.
I can float this one backwards, no problem. I'll get 2 more casts out of it.
So either 2 things will happen. I'll get a fish, but then I'm fixing to go over a shoal, or
that's why you need a power pole.
I'm going to get hung up under a rock or something, and then I do the little, I'm trying to reach behind there to keep from losing my lure, and of course the current carries me. I can't flip the lever over in enough time, and then I just break it, and then she can hear me just yelling.
Or what you could do, what I've done this way too many times, is throw it in, catch a fish, and lower that anchor as fast as humanly possible before you go over the shoal backwards.
Yeah. The benefits of having an anchor.
Yeah.
I don't.
So I was doing this, but y'all didn't see me. I got the power pole anchor. So I'm always double click that remote and just stop on a dime.
I put the Anchor Wizard kit on her RVR, and I was telling her, it's like you got to use that thing more, because and I was telling her, like, it's not that you just want to stay in one spot. Like, you get a fish on, hit that anchor, and then that gives you don't have to worry about it. You're not rushing or you're reeling it in, you're enjoying the fight. I remember the first time she did that, she goes, "Oh, that's really nice." I'm like, yeah, it is. The one thing about the Anchor Wizard on the RVR, and I'll let you say that, is
I've got scars on my knuckles from it.
Yeah. And it's
From
loud.
the crank?
Yeah, because you end up hitting your seat. And so
seat,
it was really funny when we all three of us took the RVRs out. He actually had an Anchor Wizard, and he still got his scar. From
yeah, I can't. I've got a little pink spot there from because I went hard that day on it. I wore that thing down.
And he's looking like 2 days later. He's like, "What the heck did I do?" I was like, "The same thing I did." I was like, "I just learned a little quicker."
Matching scars.
Like you're not really fishing unless you get scars from it. You know what I mean?
Or you get the on the thumbs from holding your line.
So what inspired you originally? What inspired you to get camera equipment and start filming yourself? Because obviously we all started fishing before we even thought about doing YouTube or content. What got you into actually filming your content and maybe just getting it out there to everybody?
I don't know, man. I've always had, and I won't even call it a passion. I've always enjoyed filming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was, and I've never been like super big into it and had nice equipment or anything, but the GoPros just made it fun when they first come out. I don't know. I have a buddy that does motocross, and we filmed some stuff with that. And, we used to skateboard in middle school, and we would film some stuff on that. So I don't know. It's just a way to share your experiences, and usually something funny happens, or you get a hook in your hand, and then. But I really don't have a good answer for that. It's just kind of always been kind of ingrained, I guess, to want to kind of capture some of that stuff. And I'll say, like, I love filming from the kayak. I think the camera angles are better versus like a boat on the lake. These guys that go out from their lake, and it might just be because that's what my passion is, but the camera angles and what you can see and how close you are, like watching a guy filming his boat just doesn't not do anything for me at all. But watching these guys wade creeks and kayaking these creeks is just kind of piqued my interest of that kind of stuff. So it's
what started me watching videos. I mean, as far as fishing videos, absolutely. So, and you brought up a good point there. So it may be just like you. It may be that's what I just enjoy watching. But to me, if you're watching fishing videos, but you're able to, you've got the most beautiful backdrop ever. You've got a creek out in the middle of nowhere. You've got nature. And
that a very small percentage of the human population has seen. And that river has been there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That was a main highway for Native Americans. And, there's just so much history in this body of water that it's the same. It's always been, but it's always different too, with how they change. So I definitely agree with that aspect of it. I think about that all the time.
Yeah. Because I think some people watch it that don't even care about fishing. They say, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful," as opposed to, like you said, in a lake. I've filmed myself fishing before, and I just didn't even put it out because, like, I'm a needle in a stack of needles. I'm just like, okay, I'm out on the lake. I caught a fish. Like, there's do it better.
There's a lady I work with, and she goes, "Hey, I saw that video where you caught that fish, but can you film the trees? Because the trees were beautiful. Because it was like in the fall and the trees were changing. And I like a little intro, B-roll stuff was the trees. She's like, just send me the picture of the trees. I don't care about the fish."
And that I think that's what got me into river and creek fishing with him, because I had never done it before. My degree, my bachelor's and my master's are both in biology, and that's the stuff that I absolutely love. And so I think that's really cool. And I think you mentioned something about rivers changing, right? We had like a substantial amount of rain last month, and there was a lot of flooding, and we went to our local like small skinny creek around here, and that thing changed. Like, it does not look the same at all. And I think that's one of the coolest things about that, like this area and where you're at, is just over time, just some major weather event and seeing how much things change because of things like that.
There's a spot that I love to camp. It's on this big bluff wall, and it used to be, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was 15 feet deep all the way down. And now it's filled in with so much gravel. It's, 3, 4 feet most of the way down. There's a small deep hole right at the end. But there's a rope swing there at one point. You can't go off of it anymore. And in 5 years, it'll wash back out and it'll be deep again. So it's pretty cool to kind of watch those things change.
My favorite is when the water level, of course, and I'm assuming your creeks are a lot like ours. The water level goes up really fast, but it also goes down really fast. And sometimes, and that, I think that's what got me started in really being serious about creek fishing, was you think there's nothing in there, and you're just casting around. I used to throw those little crappie jigs around in the creek all the time, and you're catching sunfish, you're catching smaller smallmouth and rock bass, which are one of my favorite ones to catch. And all of a sudden, you think you're caught up, and then it just starts running, and you get a fish that if you didn't have a picture of it, nobody would believe that you caught out of that creek. And I always like the way the waters go up and go down, and sometimes you'll get some of those big fish that get trapped, in those waters there. So,
there's hardly.
Go ahead.
I said there's nothing better than catching a 20-inch smallie in 2 foot of water.
Yes, 100%.
Different question altogether. Is there any encounter with an animal that you've had that was interesting? Have you ever had encounters with snakes, anything like that stands out?
I have encounters with snakes quite a bit. We've got, some cottonmouth and copperhead, but nothing that's ever really freaked me out. I always ask people I go with, do snakes bother you? And they'll say yes or no, and how much, and then that depends on whether I tell them if I see them or not. For the most part.
Yeah.
But I was wading a creek one time, and there was kind of something on the bottom of the water, and we kind of got over close, and it was a baby fawn that had drowned in maybe 3 foot of water. That was pretty interesting. I just remember that because I still have a picture of it. We'll have the occasional possum or raccoon get up under your hammock when you're camping out. They kind of freaks you out at 3 o'clock in the morning a little bit. I'm trying to think. We see some bald eagles every once in a while. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Do you put your hand on your heart when you see those, or start salute?
No, that's funny.
So, and again, same thing here. We see snakes all the time. Snakes don't really bother me. I grew up around them. I actually have. I think I used to. I was one of the kids that I just grew up killing them. Just like I think most people that grow up in the country do. I've gotten to the age, I guess I could say, is I appreciate them, I guess is the best word for it. If I see them, I think they're cool instead of, okay, let me go pick up a rock.
Yeah, sometimes a cottonmouth will try to get in the boat with you too.
Yeah,
I've had that a few times. They come to you, and my wife just texted me. I didn't mention this, but I like to catch snapping turtles. Like if I see a snapping turtle, it's my duty to go grab it by the tail. Usually just to freak out the people I'm with. But we've caught some pretty good size one the last couple of years. But you can sometimes you'll see them, and then so I'll be floating with a group of 5 or 6 people, and then here goes Tyler. He just dives off his kayak and comes up with a snapping turtle just to get a reaction out of somebody. So.
She's been catching turtles here lately.
Not snapping turtles. I don't know.
That would be impressive if you did.
I don't know how to handle those. So I'm always looking, because there was one that I caught. He was covered in algae and stuff. And I'm looking and I'm like, what kind is that before I grab him?
I will say
Babies.
I'll grab a snapping turtle, but the soft shell turtles,
Mhm.
they're so fast and so much quicker. Like I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd be able to handle one of those. And their
I-
necks are so much longer.
Yeah, I attempted to catch one of those and failed miserably. So I'm going to talk about one of the things that we had happen to us here recently. We have the same exact snakes that you do. We were at, again, that creek that I was talking about earlier. And I think his leaving snakes alone actually kind of came from me, because he ran over a snake one day, and it was like in my parents' driveway, and I kind of like made friends with the snake. My dog went to the snake and hung out with it for a while. I was just kind of curious what it was, a black snake. I wasn't worried about it. And so when he ran over it, I was like, dude, seriously. So we went creek fishing, and this is like the second time in a week. I had a snake encounter before, almost stepped on one, didn't see it till the last minute. And then we get to our spot. We're fishing at a new spot, and he sees a snake, and he's like, I think it's just a water snake. And I was like, okay, whatever. So we go in. I'm standing like 2 feet away from him, and I feel something on my foot. And I'm thinking it's like, I feel like a nibble. And I'm like, okay, that's got to be a fish. And I look down. This thing had curled up on my foot. And I just kind of said nope and took a step back. And he's looking at me like, wait, what was that? And I was like, there was a snake literally wrapped on my foot. After we left, he's like, dude, if it was me, we would have been gone like that.
Oh, yeah. And again, I'm always been good. I can tell the difference between a water snake and a cottonmouth. But we saw it. We went to the spot, and we kind of got this one little spot, this little bend where we like to throw in there. And I saw the snake swim off. So knowing the water snakes usually like to come back to where they were. And so I was like, okay, so I told her, I was like, I just saw that snake kind of go by. So just kind of, he'll probably be back. And sure enough, like 1 or 2 casts later, she started saying, nope, that snake literally came right back and then went right on top of her foot and then just coiled up. Just, I guess it was a nice warm spot to lay down in.
There was a time we'd been fishing all day. It was kind of getting dusky dark, and we kind of pulled over to where we were going to camp out. And I went to step out of the kayak, and just cottonmouth sitting right there, right above my foot. I was about to step on him, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got my paddle, and kind of threw him across the side, and there was one under my kayak the next morning, and there was one under my buddy's kayak the next morning where they had curled up underneath there. So you got to watch out, be careful. They're pretty good about, you got to really, really step on them for them to, and sometimes it seems like they're chasing you down, but they're usually just trying to get around you.
They're usually in the way.
I've had plenty of those experiences. I had one that I was under a tree and it was right there. And then I had another one. He was looking at otter, and I'm like, oh, there's a cottonmouth right there. And it just it literally was just trying to get out of the way.
Yeah. We've had quite the increase in the otter population here, and that's one thing that does kind of worry me about, because they can definitely decimate a waterway. They go after those smallmouth. They go after the good smallmouth. They don't mess with the little ones. They like to grab those big ones. So I know they're looking at some different things here in the state of Arkansas, because Arkansas has got kind of some very strange regulations, and it's not across the board. Some waterways will have like a 10-inch and a numbered limit, and some are like 10-inch here, some are 14, some are only 18. And I'm like, okay, if you're catching the 10-inchers, though, you're going to have a serious problem. If you're harvesting the 10-inchers, I guess you could say, you're going to have a serious problem with your population of 16 to 18 and above. And we just don't have those fish anymore. They're out there, obviously, but not like they used to be. And that's assuming everyone's following the regulation. But I feel like most people that are on rivers and creeks are, either catch and release or following the regulation. But yeah, that's something that has been a big deal here locally. As what can we do to increase? Because we don't have the Susk here. We don't have a big waterway that's got just loaded with 20-inch smallmouth. We have some really small portions of waterway that are historically great with smallmouth, but
they're taking 15 years to grow a 20-inch smallmouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if people are allowed to harvest the 10 to 12 inches, which is insane to me, that's going to affect that. So
there's a guy that comments on almost all my TikTok videos. He goes, what's he say? Remember to trap otters and shoot carp.
Yeah.
So
I wish more people do that to carp.
They're everywhere around here.
They'll get your attention too. You know, especially if you got like some polarized glasses on or something, you're looking around and, you know, you just all of a sudden you see a huge school.
And you get real excited because you think it's a smallmouth.
Yeah, a fish like this big. And I'm like, oh my God. And they're usually followed by even bigger carp. And I don't know about you, I have never really caught a quality fish in areas where we see big schools of carp around. So usually when I'll see them, I'll kind of move on a little bit. But
what about like spotted gar? Do y'all have those?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you get to those deep slow holes and you see a bunch of gar, are you catching many fish in there?
I'm not. I'm not.
I don't either. I just was curious if it was something I made up. Yeah.
Yeah, they're in there because I can see them. Some of those deeper holes, especially when the creeks get a little low, you can see, you know, your visibility is quite a ways, and you can see, you know, some smallies and some other fish kind of, you know, around in the rocks, you know, like they do there. But yeah, if there's gar around, they're not necessarily going after those bigger fish, obviously, but I don't know if it's them being skittish or them just changing their behaviors, but I don't care if I'm dragging the bottom. I don't care if I'm doing swim bait, nothing. They don't seem to be doing anything. So doing content, what would be the most surprising thing to you since you started doing, you know, serious content, since you took it, you know, kind of that next level there? What's been the biggest surprise to you in the whole process?
The biggest surprise is I can take a video that I spend a bunch of time on. Like, let's say it's just a short, and I spend a bunch of time and I edit and I time it up to the music and I do all this, and I'll get 15 views, and then I'll just throw something together and it'll get 10,000. So there's that, and then also the first couple times you have a video do well, you start getting kind of like the hate comments, and you know, just some of that just kind of at first is like, oh, that's not what I meant by this video, or why are people being like this? But then now, like, if I get a notification and I read the comment and it's that, and I was like, oh, I'm doing something, like I'm getting some views here, like bring it on, bring it on. And then you got the you can reply back to videos, and so I've replied back to a few videos, you know, just kind of being smart back. So, but most of it's pretty funny, and now it's like I kind of look forward to that because that means your video got out there.
Yeah, well, we had Alex Rudd on the live stream once, and he said something really interesting that kind of stuck with me. He says, "Was it what? Do nothing, say nothing, and then be nothing."
Yeah.
And that was because I was telling him how he responds to trolls, and you know, it depends on the content, obviously. Now, you're just going to have it, but doing review videos, that is another thing. And I don't know that I do review videos so much. It's more informational. But if I'm talking about, and I call them cult brands, and you know, I represent some of those brands as far as selling them. But if you say what's perceived as anything negative about a brand that someone may have, and I'm always careful not to do that because to each their own. There's a butt for every seat. And but and it was actually Eric's kayak, our mutual friend there. You know, I borrowed his Crescent Shoaly, and I said one little thing. I said, the one thing I'd watch out for this kayak, and it's something that happened in the same design from a different manufacturer, is this. You know, a little bit of hole cracking under the seat. And I even showed, like, you know, the bottom of the seat, even the paint was starting to wear on that. It's like, that's just something to look for. It may never happen, but it is a concern with me. Having a stiletto point going down on the hull and all that weight on top of it. So, and he agreed with it, you know, Eric, but man, I had a couple of people on there. It's like, how dare, that was the comment word for word. How dare you say that about Crescent? I'm like, I never said anything negative. I enjoyed the kayak. It wasn't for me necessarily. I preferred the RVR, but it wasn't because the RVR paddled better or was faster. it was because, I like a little bit of more of a forgiving kayak because I'm not paying attention. I'm fishing and, but the Crescent Shoaly was one of the fastest kayaks and one of the more maneuverable ones. But I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay, 6'5", 270 pounds, going over a shoal at a pretty good speed, maybe hitting one little rock, and then I'm doing this. So I like a little bit of that secondary stability. But again, I was like, it just and Old Town's another one of those brands too, which again, we sell. But, any negative comment or even perception of negative comment, because I don't really talk negatively about a lot of stuff, but yeah, someone will get on there and it's like, man, it's like, like, I can't believe you would say that. I'm like, well, I didn't say they were crap. I said there's pros and cons. Like, the kayaks that I love, I'll still give a pro and a con. There's no perfect kayak. So that's one thing that I always stress to people. There's no such thing as a perfect kayak. There's kayaks that are built for specific needs. That's the reason why, if there's a perfect kayak, hey buddy, if there's a perfect kayak, that's the only kayak that brand would make. Hey,
you can see mom, okay? Yes, buddy. What things? I'll get you in just a minute, okay? Go sit on the couch. Like 10. Yeah.
Chris,
sorry about that.
No, that's all good, man. Chris here, I actually saw that. He did a kind of a review video on a kayak, and he said he was talking about the weight. It's like I just saw them come out of the woodwork at him, and like, man, it's like he didn't say anything wrong. It's things to look out for.
I got the Yak Attack boxes. I can't think what they're called. The trays.
Oh,
you stack two of them on and they go in there.
Yeah.
The track pack. So I got those. I was super excited about it, and I really like them, except for I've got probably 6 or 7 clips where I hit something and they fall out.
Yeah.
Or my leg hits them and they fall out. So I was going to make a video on that. I haven't done it yet. I don't know if I ever have a future getting sponsored by Yak Attack or not, or if it even matters. But I love their camera equipment, their camera poles, and
I actually think they appreciate that stuff, though. Yak Attack is. And Yak Attack was started by the same dude that started Bonafide, but they like the feedback, and that whole company does feedback the best of any. And it doesn't mean that's not a knock on anyone else. It is on a couple of manufacturers, but taking that feedback, because there's people out there that use these and real. If you're making a product that's got a thing on there that's easy to fix, which that is, they want to know that. Same thing with us with the track pack. I prefer to mount it on the inside if possible, because if it's on the edge, things happen. You're going to bump into that. And like you said, it does come unclipped from that bracket fairly easily.
Yeah, I've dumped everything in there probably 3 times, but luckily every time I've been in a foot or 2 of water.
Yeah. Well, man, we're at an hour 10. Man, again, I really appreciate you coming by. Really, love to have you back on here in the future as well. And man, next time you talk to Eric, because Eric was supposed to be kind of a co-guest on there.
We'll get him.
Just tell him we really appreciate him standing us up. I'm hurt, and I don't know how our future is going to be there because of that. So I'm kidding.
We've got a trip planned in September. I'll give him a hard time for you, and maybe we can all get together another time.
Oh, absolutely, man, absolutely. I look forward to it. I said I think the world of Eric. I said I reached out to him because I knew he had the kayak that a lot of my followers were wanting to get information on. The people I work for are fairly open about me doing reviews on kayaks we don't carry, but that was one that I thought was going to be a really beneficial one. And man, I called him up, or I hit him up here and then got his number. And I'm like, man, it's like, how do you feel about me borrowing your kayak and doing some video content on it and then bringing it back to you? He says, no questions asked. He's like, yeah, man, I'd love to. I'd be happy to. And then
Eric's a good dude.
He is, man. And like when you're talking about a stranger, and I mean, he knew of me obviously from YouTube, but like a stranger coming up to your place of work, taking your kayak and, having it. I told him, like, man, I was like, well, I'll store it in our warehouse. It's secure and all that. And man, I had that thing for a few weeks. And
it's 3 or 4 years ago. I sent him an email and I was like, hey man, I got a creek. You need to come fish with me. And he did. Never met him before. We did an overnight trip and had a great time. And then I had a power pole, and so he kind of saw that the first time, and then the second time he came, I had it again, and I sent him home with it, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
try it out, because I have another one. I had two of them at the time, and now he's got one. So, and I think it's the one I sold him to. So,
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was
he
on
ended
that.
up, he ended up keeping it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
That, and I will say that's probably got to be the weirdest experience for him, because it's literally me and him picking up his kayak. I'm just like, this is like, okay.
That's the way we do it here in the South. That's
yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, again, man, thank you so much for coming by. Thank you everybody that's listened to me talk here for over an hour again. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video. It gets it out to a broader audience. It helps Tyler out here. We definitely want to get his name out, and as a thanks for him coming by, spending an hour with us, just chatting it up on river and creek fishing, kayaks, and everything in between.
Tyler, remind everyone where they can find you.
Yes.
So I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. It's either Southern Flow or Southern Flow TN.
All right, man. Well, go make sure you guys go follow him. Obviously, we'll bring you another live stream here next week. I'm not sure who that's going to be yet, but it may just be me and Christina here answering y'all's questions. Thank you so much for asking the questions on the live chat and then catching us on the replay. And also, if you get your podcasts and live streams on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, we're on there as well. So make sure you're leaving a review for that. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for coming by, and we'll see y'all on the next one.
Thank y'all for having me.